English literature for SS1. We shall start with the prospects of English literature. We have about 3 main prospects listed here. One is that the knowledge of literature helps one to better understand one's immediate environment. Since, of course, literature is sometimes defined as a mirror of the society. So with that, one gets to know one's society better. Second, literature helps one to understand the culture of others. Through the study of literature, you get to meet with people in different cultures other than your culture. Most people that have not been to the US before can tell about the culture of the people of the society there because they have read either dramatic works, prosaic works, or poetry from that part of the world. The next prospect is that literature also helps, it's a form of entertainment. Yes, literary works entertain us. These are about 3 prospects of literature. Now, introduction. What is literature? First of all, let us talk about literature in English language and English literature. Some people appear to use the both interchangeably, but they mean different things. English literature has to do with all the literary outputs by the Englishman or woman, while literature in English has to do with all the literary output, poetry, drama, and prose written in English language, irrespective of whoever writes. You could write from Kenya, from Nigeria, from Namibia, from the US, even from England. So long as it is written in English language, it falls under the category of literature in English. While English literature is just the literature from England. I'm sure that is clear. Alright. Now that takes us to what is literature. Literature has been variously defined by a number of persons. One of which is that it is a creative or imaginative work of art produced by a poet, a dramatist, or a novelist. Others have defined literature, as I said earlier, to mean the mirror held up to life. There has been a number of issues arising from the definition of literature, while some would insist that literature, the definition of literature should include other works like mathematics, physics, chemistry. All others have insisted that it should be restricted to any work that is imaginative and creative. So there has been a lot of definition, but the working definition we're going to be using in this class would be that it is a creative work of art, creative or imaginative work of art that is produced by a poet, a dramatist, or a novelist. Now, literature in English is divided into 3 main genres or 3 main types. Now, the types of literature or genres of literature is different from forms of literature. When we talk about forms of literature, it could be written or oral. That is forms. Then under the written form, we have 3 types or 3 genres. And they include, in the right order, poetry, drama, and prose. It has to be ordered this way: poetry, drama, and prose in the order of development. Prose is the last. Now for our class today, our focus, of course, before we even go to drama, poetry, we should understand that poetry has a definition of its own. Poetry, collection of poem, while poem itself, according to William Wordsworth, is the overflowing emotion recaptured in tranquility. Of course, drama too has its definition as a genre of literature which creates human experience through acting. While the difference between prose and drama is that while prose is written in chapters and verses, where drama is written in acts and scenes. Now, our focus in this class will be on drama. Now, what is drama? Partly I've said earlier that drama is a genre of literature which creates or recreates human experience through acting. So one of the very important thing about drama, or one of the very important ingredients about drama, is that it involves dialogue. It involves action. Yes. Characters in dramatic works tell us about themselves through acting, through their interactions with other characters. Unlike what we see in the prose, the novel for instance, where there is a single narrator through whose voice we get to know about other characters in the work. Sometimes it could be a voice that is part of the work, in the case of homodiegetic, or a character that is outside the work, in the case of heterodiegetic, or what we call omniscient point of view, which is a writing technique. But in drama, all of the characters are on stage. They act out their life. We know about them from what they say, or from what other characters on stage say about them, and from the way they dress. These are some of the way a dramatist or a playwright creates characters that are said to be credible on stage. Now, the focus today is on drama. We are going to be picking one drama text or one play to explain the plot, the background, the setting, and all of that concerning the drama. And now, the play in focus is Lorian Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun. The title of the play is A Raisin in the Sun, and the author is Lorian Hansberry. Now, it might interest you to know that the first thing you do before you go into the analysis of a play work, of a literary work, indeed, is that you must have to first of all understand the background of the author. Why is this necessary? Sometimes the understanding of the background of the author makes it pretty easy to understand the work. And that's why it is always advisable that you consider the background of the author, being that sometimes authors, or playwrights in this case, cannot help writing themselves into their work. So it is better understood, their works are better understood when you know their background. Hence, we shall be talking about the background of this female African-American writer called Lorian Hansberry. She is the fourth of 4 children from her parents. Of course, she grew up in Chicago, south side of Chicago, United States of America. Her parents were very rich. In fact, her parents were the first black family who moved to the white neighborhood, bought a house in a white neighborhood, and moved there. And of course, Lorian Hansberry, as little as she was there then, saw all of the racial discrimination that she had to pass through together with her parents and her elder ones. So she grew up knowing the pains of racism and the pains of being a black woman. Not just a black now, but a black woman. The suffering of a black man, of the blacks in the white community is well understood. Then that of the women is even more overbearing, because they are not only suffering from the fact that they are black, they are only suffering from the fact that they are quote and unquote weaker verses. So Lorian Hansberry grew up knowing all of these things. And that is why by the time we go into the work, we would discover that some of these things, some of this background, they are written into her play. That is A Raisin in the Sun. Now let's talk about the plots of this work. Of course, when we talk about the plot of a work, we mean the scaffold, as it were, upon which the story is hanging. That's what we mean by the plot. The plot is different from the story. If, for instance, we say the king died and the queen died, that's a story. But when we say the queen died because the king died, that is a plot. So plot is an arrangement of events with emphasis on causation, while a story is a mere arrangement of events with emphasis on perhaps time and not on causation. So let us talk about the plots of Lorian Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun. And mind you, you must first of all mention the name of the author before you mention the work. So I keep saying Lorian Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun. Now, what is the plot of this story? This story is weaved around the family. The family is younger family, the family of younger. The eldest member of this family is Lena, who is a mother and a grandmother. She has a daughter rather named Benita. He probably has a son named Walter Lee. The Walter Lee has a wife called Ruth, and together they have a son called Travis. So I've mentioned 5 persons. So we have 5 main characters in this work. Of course, we have the only white character in this work is Mr. Carr, which is a white character. Other characters are black characters. So I've mentioned 5 persons. The story opens with these 5 persons living in an apartment made for 3 persons. That's to show you that they were living in poverty. And of course, we see them hoping to get about 10,000 US dollars, which is the insurance money they were supposed to get after the death of the older, or what was referred to as the bigger younger. That is the husband to Lena younger. That's the eldest in the family. So everyone was in anticipation, expecting the $10,000. Why was it necessary to get this $10,000? They were living in poverty, while the mother, that is Lena, the eldest member of the family, hopes to buy a building in the white community, a house in the white neighborhood, to liberate the family from the squalor and the makeshift house where they were staying, where they are staying, to move into a white neighborhood, which is her dream. Walter Lee, her son, is interested in the money coming in so that he would get a portion of the money to start a liquor business and of course liberate the family from poverty. Benita, a member of the family too, hopes to continue her medical study and graduate as a doctor, while Ruth, the wife of Lena, is interested in the welfare of her son Travis. So as you can see, everyone was in great expectation of the $10,000 that was to be an insurance fund on behalf of the bigger Lena. That's the Lena whom we never get to see on stage, whose voice we get to hear, or whose existence we get to hear through other characters. Eventually the money comes, the $10,000. Now, Lena is interested in getting a house of about $6,000 or so in a white neighborhood. Walter is interested in getting a portion of the money to start a liquor business from where he hopes to liberate the family from poverty. Benita needs some of the money to continue her medical studies. And so you see that there is a lot of pressure placed on the $10,000. Point is that Lena, that is the oldest in the family, buys a house in the white neighborhood. And of course, you would agree with me that that is exactly the experience of Lorian Hansberry when she was growing up back then in Chicago. Of course, the play is set in Chicago. We shall come to that pretty later. So Lena buys the house in a white neighborhood. This is a neighborhood where no black lives. Of course, you know back then during the period of racism in 1950. Did I tell you that this play was published in 1957? Okay, that was the period when the blacks had their own apartment, had their own location. They live in a separate location from the whites. And you would be risking your life if you went to, for any reason, to the white community. That would be dangerous. So the blacks had their vicinity, the area they stayed. The whites had theirs too. So that by the time you want to get into a train, there is a queue for the blacks, and there is a queue too for the whites. Even in a restaurant, you see the blacks and the whites all purely separated. That is the background to this work. So then it was almost, it took willpower for Lena to have thought about buying a house in a white neighborhood. Of course, she buys the house in a white neighborhood. Of course, because of the pressure placed on her by Walter, the only son, she gives Walter part of the money to invest in his liquor business. Walter gives his friend Harry, that's another character in the work, Will Harry, gives him the money so that the investment for the liquor business is done. And of course, part of the money was supposed to be what would have been given to Benita. Like I said, Benita wanted to go for medical studies. So Walter collects what was meant for Benita for her studies and invests all of them into his liquor business. As we see in the story, Harry makes away with the entire money, and Walter's dream of becoming a manager of a liquor company did not come to fruition anymore. Neither is Benita able to complete her medical studies because the money meant for such completion was made away, or is made away by Will Harris. Of course, the only person that appears to have succeeded towards the end of the story, we see Lena and of course the children moving to the white neighborhood, having secured a house in the white neighborhood. And of course the play ends with all of them eventually moving to the white neighborhood. Now this is the plot of the story of Lorraine Hansberry, Erasing in the Sun. Now let's talk about the setting. When we talk about the setting of a play, we are talking about two things. It could be the temporal setting or the spatial setting. The temporal setting takes care of the period of time in which the play or story is set. For Lorraine Hansberry's Erasing in the Sun, it is set between 1945 and 1959, during the racial period in the United States of America. It has not stopped, it is still there, but in a very subtle means, subtle manner, subtle manifestation. So even in the United States of America and in Britain, in most of these European countries where they preach equality of human, we see that it is not really equality. We discover that racism is manifesting in a subtle manner too. So Lorraine Hansberry's Erasing in the Sun is set between 1945 and 1959, and that is the temporal setting. Now for the spatial setting, it is set in the south side of Chicago. Don't forget that Lorraine Hansberry grew up in South Side Chicago while she was